I went for months and months and months without any business. And then after I cleaned up my terrible thinking, I sold 35 houses in 6 months, which
Oh,
wasn't bad
wow.
back then. And
It's not bad
then
now.
and then I started our own company. It became um, well known over the US. I started it in a town of about 40,000 back then. And it became one of the top offices in the Century 21 system. We were number 3 for a period of 3 or 4 years. And out of 7,500 offices in the US and Canada. So that was exciting. And then we sold our company to Merrill Lynch Realty. That was way back when Merrill Lynch had an actual real estate division. And that's when I did some interesting things that were actually preparing me for Keller Williams, but Keller Williams didn't exist then. Well, it may have existed, but I'd never heard of it. I did a turnaround, I did an acquisition, and all of this was for Merrill Lynch. I did a startup, and then, of course, they bought, the office we had that was highly, highly, highly successful. And then 2 or 3 years later, Merrill Lynch sold to Prudential. And Prudential tried to get me to stay with them, and I wouldn't do it because I read their franchise agreement and it was just the same old, same old. And I knew real estate had to change. I just didn't quite know how it should change. And so I started a real estate consulting company because I had a 2-year non-compete. Gary Keller heard about me and he managed to find me sort of accidentally. No, truthfully, it was a God thing. You know what I mean? And he found me, and he began a dialogue with me, and then he invited me to go to Austin. And that's where I learned about the models. And I just went crazy over the models because I had already profit shared only 2 levels in my company I sold to Merrill Lynch. I had an ALC, except I didn't call it an ALC, but it functioned just like Gary's ALC. And his economic model was a lot better than the economic model I had in our company that we sold to Merrill Lynch. So I got really excited because by the time I met Gary, my non-compete was going to be over. Well, I met him, told him I wanted to open a region. So I opened the first region outside of Texas, where he had 7 offices when I met him. Well, we did so well in the Oklahoma region. It was crazy. We did so well. And after 3 years, he asked me if I would join him. And if I would, he would give me some ownership in the national company. And he asked me to help him build it across the United States. And then, of course, I was the one that opened Canada. So that's how we came together. There are some interesting stories about how we came together, but you get the point. We finally came together. And so after 10 years, when I moved to Austin, we had 1,800 agents and we had 45 offices. Well, I closed 15 offices. That brought us down to 30 offices. And out of the 30 offices, I had 17 team leaders dehired. And then I foreclosed on 5 regions. So I became the wicked witch of the, what is it, East or West? East? I don't remember which one was the wicked witch. But everybody ended up supporting me because they knew that had to happen to get the ship turned around and get it headed in the right direction. So I did the hard part. And when the book is written, there better be a chapter on Mo, or I swear I will come back to haunt whoever wrote the book.
Awesome.
And
well, Mo, you earned a nickname during that time.
I was called the Velvet Hammer. And the reason is because I loved on people, then I kicked them out of the company, and then I loved on them some more. So, they would tease me and tell me that they knew I was getting all over them, but it didn't feel so bad because it was enveloped with love. So they called me the Velvet Hammer. What's so interesting is I was able to be the CEO for 10 years. And my goal was to build the company to 50,000 agents and 500 offices. Well, by the time I did that, it took 10 years. And I built it to over 50,000. Well, I didn't, but the team that we had at the time built it to over 50,000 agents and 530 offices. And then I had been grooming Mark Willis to take my place because, y'all, I was tired. I was worn out because you can only have that job about 10 years and you're totally exhausted. So I gave it to Mark and I said, darling, don't you screw this up because we're really on a roll. And I just loved him and he was wonderful. And I have been talking to him quite a bit lately. And, I just hated it when he got tired and he left the company. He was so tired. Oh,
right.
Shoot.
Right.
So that's the story in a nutshell.
Oh, that's so great. Hey, Mo, how did you know Gary was the right person to partner with? That's a life-altering decision.
I am so glad you asked that question because you all, if you listen carefully, you're going to learn a really valuable lesson. At the time Gary contacted me when he accidentally, no, it was a God thing, when he accidentally found me, we had a terrible recession, economic recession in the oil patch. And the oil patch was Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, all those states. And the economy crashed as bad as it has in COVID, except the crash was not closed by the government. The crash happened because OPEC lowered the price of oil per barrel to $8. And nobody can even begin. You can't even pay a third of your expenses on $8 a barrel. It's just nuts. And it killed the economy. And we lost nearly everything. We lost all of the cash we had in savings because we had to live on it, because our real estate company, it was like a faucet was turned off. It was just crazy bad. And we lost a lot of our investments, and we had invested in some developments, and we had to pay everybody else's bank loan for those investments because they had gone into bankruptcy. It was just horrible. And so here, this strange man I'd never heard of named Gary Keller calls me, and he says, I've heard about you, and I just wondered if you would be willing to have a few conversations so that we could get to know each other. He said, I've heard great things. You know, what you did with your Century 21 office. I've heard what you did with Merrill Lynch, and could we talk? And I said, well, sure. So he called me about 3 times a week for weeks.
Persistence.
And I cannot begin to tell you how discouraged I was back then because of the state of the economy. And I finally reached a point where I would say to my friends, we're going to build back. And when we do, it's going to be bigger and better than before. And they would roll their eyes and go, Mo, you're nuts. You can't build back from what's happened. There's no way that can happen. The truth is, the first 1,000 times I said that, I didn't believe it either. But one morning I woke up and I looked at my husband and I said, you know what? We really are going to build back. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. But you see, I said it so many times that it became reality in my head. Do you get that? Do you guys get that?
Yeah.
Now, a truth about mindset that you must understand is that when you believe something to be true, when you really, really, really believe it, and I finally really, really, really believed that we would build back and it would be bigger and better than ever before. When I finally reached that point, I looked at Richard and said, you know what? It's really going to happen. Don't know how, don't know when, but it's going to happen. Well, he rolled his eyes at me. And I just thought, okay, nobody believes me, but I know it's going to happen. And you all, 2 weeks from the day I said that, this strange man, Gary Keller, called me. The rest is history.
That's great.
He asked
wow.
me to be CEO. He gave me a percentage of the company, which was worth 0 back then. But it motivated me to do whatever it takes to turn this company around, because he was going to lose it all if we didn't get it turned around and headed in the right direction. He had worked so hard by himself to try to give birth to the national company. He didn't even think international, that he affected his health. And the first year I was CEO, he was really sick. And then at the end of that year, he got much better and he came back energized. It was lonely that first year. So that's kind of how it happened. The point is this. The reason I knew Gary was the right partner, he was the right person to go into business with, is because my mind was free of fear. And my mind truthfully believed that we would build back. And when your mindset is correct, you will see the opportunity. But if you don't have a correct mindset, opportunity after opportunity after opportunity will fly in your face and you won't even recognize it because you're consumed with fear or you're consumed with anxiety or whatever. Do you get my point?
That's a powerful point. That's very, very good. And it's
really, so when you really, really believe it to be true, excuse me, I've just got to get this one more thing in. what happens is your physical body gets energy, and your mind begins to focus on things that will help that belief that you have inside your head to become a reality. That's what literally happens.
It's so powerful, and to be able to talk about that, right? Because we hear Gary talk about how important the first CEO, right, you were to the company, and we share and we see your hand all over the company. And one of the spots that we see it especially is around our culture. What shaped you to lead us into a spot where we go, hey, culture has to be who we are as a company?
Well, two things. Number one, I learned how to build culture in the company that I sold to Merrill Lynch. That's where I realized how important culture was. And I actually built the same kind of culture there that we have in Keller Williams. But here's the interesting part. Gary, in his first ALC, had already invented or written the Y4C2Ts. So the foundational piece for the culture was already there. And what is so beautiful and wonderful about our culture is this. It doesn't matter how crazy the world gets. It doesn't matter how crazy your state gets. It just doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it really matters, but get my point. Our culture is our bedrock, and it isn't going to change because our culture, our Y4C2Ts, is based on eternal truths. And win-win or no deal will be as true 500 years from now as it is today. Integrity, do the right thing, is as true 5 years from now, or 100 years from now, or 500 years from now as it is today. Trust begins with honesty. Do you get my point? When you have a culture based on eternal truths, it never, ever changes. Now, you can always improve your culture, like we're adding the equality committees. See, that's taking it to the next level. That's improving the culture. But the culture doesn't change. Laws may change, rules may change, the world may get terribly chaotic, which it has. But our culture doesn't change. It only can get better because it's based on truths that will never, ever go away. Customers always come first. That's going to be true 500 years from now. And that's see, right. We've got two pieces of the culture. Well, there are really several pillars of the culture, but the first pillar is the Y4C2Ts. And every single person in Keller Williams needs to memorize it and know that sucker where you could say it in your sleep, because those are the rules we live by. The second piece of our culture is God and family first and the business second. Yeah, I know that's politically incorrect, and I know it's politically incorrect, and I don't give a rip because it's based on an eternal truth. And the eternal truth is God and family means whatever your faith is. And you know how we embrace all of our people and the different faiths, because I want to teach you all that it's possible to build a business with people of different color, with people of different nationalities and people of different faiths, that we literally can love each other, have each other's backs, and build something powerful. And we've done that. Now we need
Oh,
to
that's
improve, but we've done it. And we do it primarily on those two pillars of our culture. Because when you're interviewing somebody brand new to our company, whether they're experienced or they're new, and they don't get excited about the Y4C2Ts, and they fluff off God and family first and the business second, they're not a match. So let them go do their thing at somebody else's company. They've got to be a match to those two pieces of culture. They have to show some enthusiasm for those two things. Now, remember, God means whatever your faith is. So if you're interviewing an atheist who doesn't believe there's a God, well, just don't worry about it. Just say, okay, for you, it's atheism and family first, whatever. But they've got to show some excitement about those two things, or they're not a match. They've got to show that they are interested in technology. Now, if they don't have a tech mind, then if you hire them, you got to make them get a tech assistant real fast. And they've got to have no aversion to lead generation. If they're scared to death of lead generation and picking up the phone, then they need to go fail at somebody else's company, not ours. How is that for getting fired up?
That is so great. What I love about it is, Mo, you've created an identity in our culture. I mean, in our company. And this is who we are. And as the leader, as one of the leaders of our company, for you to say that so strongly is just a powerful thing. And so I really, I think that's just wonderful. It's really great having you lead us in that spot and just knowing who we are. You know, in a time when real estate in our area is really, really busy, and that becomes the thing. Over your years, how have you kept God, family, and then business your priority and been so successful? I know sometimes that's the challenge that people are facing is, I can't do that because I have to really work on the business. How has that shown up in your life?
Well, I think that I developed a pretty good skill in time blocking. You know, Gary taught me to block out my family affairs first. Like I block out my grandkids' birthdays, my kids' birthdays, family trips, family get-togethers before I put anything else on the calendar. But I want you to know that there are times you cannot be in balance. Balance goes out the window. Like when I moved to Austin to run the company in those early days, I was in the office at 6 o'clock in the morning and I didn't come home until 2 o'clock the next morning. I would sleep about 3 hours, get up, do the same thing again. Now I want y'all to see the trophy I got. Can you see this little thing right here on my skin? That's called a pacemaker. So I tell Gary that's my trophy for working my butt off. And I had those kinds of hours for about 4 years. And I paid a price for it because it was a lot of stress. And see, we didn't even get to pay ourselves a lot of the time. Gary and I didn't even get a salary because the company was struggling. And I had 7 people on staff when I took over, and I had to de-hire about 4 of those. And then we didn't have the money to hire new people. Are you with me? Let me tell you, I worked. None of the CEOs after me have been there at 6 in the morning till 2 o'clock the next morning. Folks, my life was about as out of balance as it could get. But I knew what I had to do to get the thing turned around. So you're not always going to be in balance, And so when you have a chance to be in Ballast, make sure you're time blocking where you've blocked off your family stuff, and don't you compromise it. I want to tell you a little story. I was teaching FSO 1 year, Franchise Systems Organization or Operations, Franchise Systems Operations. And I was talking about time blocking. I was talking about your faith and your family are first, and your business is second. And a woman raised her hand, and she stood up and she began to weep. And she said, "What I love about Keller Williams is I get to go to my son's soccer games." She had come from another competitor. Well, I'll just tell you who it was. It was Remax. And she got admonished for going to her kids' soccer games. And she, they didn't like that. I don't know what they said to her. But at Keller Williams, she knew that God and family came first and then the business. And she was so thrilled because she could go to her son's soccer games without guilt or admonishment. Just had to tell you that. It was really a touching moment. My heart rejoiced.
I think that's the, we know when we're living in the culture of our company, and we know when we're not. And our company has changed a lot over the last year since you've been CEO. What are some of the things that you've are memorable moments and things you had to work through as the company, and the things that you were excited about ahead? What are some of those things?
Well, one of the things, since we're kind of on culture, one of the things is that I used to go to Yale University to speak to their MBA program, because Stanford University wrote a case study about our company when I was CEO, and they've been pretty good about updating it. So Yale started using it with their MBA program, and they would invite me to come to answer questions, when they did their final week on our case study. And I always knew what the first question would be. And the question was always this: doesn't that God and family and then business thing hurt you? And I would say, I am so excited that a farm girl from Oklahoma can teach you something. I can't believe I get to teach you something. So get your pencils out and get your paper out, and you write this sucker down, because you need to know this. And so they'd get their pencils out and their paper out, and boy, they knew at that moment I was a different kind of a CEO. I said, God, family, and business, and the Y4C2Ts, because they kind of scoffed at that, serve as a magnet. Now, do you Yale people know what a magnet is? What does it do? And one of them says, it draws stuff to it. I said, these two pillars of our culture serve as a magnet to draw like-minded people. That doesn't mean we're the same color. That doesn't mean we're the same nationality. That doesn't mean that we believe the same politically. It doesn't mean that we're anything alike, but in the area of God, family, then business, and the Y4C2Ts. Now, let me tell you something, MBA students. When you have a powerful magnet drawing people who are like-minded and they buy into your purpose, which is careers worth having, businesses worth owning, lives worth living, experiences worth giving, and legacies worth leaving, you march forward to your goal with a power you don't believe. You want to know why we excelled during times when the market dropped? It's because of our magnet drawing like-minded people. And they bought into our culture and they bought into our purpose. And there you've got it.
Powerful. Wow, that's awesome.
It's when I discovered people didn't understand that was a major point in building the company, because now most every time I get a chance to talk to our agents, I review that. Remember that the Y4C2Ts and God, family, and business serve as a magnet to draw like-minded people. And when you have like-minded people together, oh my goodness, and they love your purpose, you're there. You have
It
power.
is so good. It is so
That's why we're
good.
the biggest company in the whole wide world is because we have like-minded people for the most part. You know, every now and then we find we've let somebody in that's not like-minded. So we got to hire them.
That's right. That's when that hammer part of comes with the velvet on it. Great. Hey, Mo, one of the great things about our company is not only those, but it's also the generosity and KW Cares and how we take care of. Will you tell us a little bit about how KW Cares came to be and what are some of the results of it?
KW Cares actually began in the Southwest Market Center in Austin. And Mary Tennant was the team leader in that market center at that time. And they were so wonderful. If an agent became depressed or discouraged, you know, they had a little committee that would do things to encourage them, maybe take them dinner, just call them to see how they are. Like if somebody died and they couldn't afford the funeral, a relative died, or maybe one of the agents, because that was a big market center, and then they would raise money to pay for the funeral. I mean, it was just wonderful what they were doing in that market center, and they called it KW Cares. So one day Mary came over to the national office. At the time it was just national. And she said, Mo, can you take this KW Cares thing and make it a 501c3 so that everybody in Keller Williams can participate, and whatever they give is tax deductible. And this can be for the whole company and not just for our market center. And as she said that, I just had chilly bumps all over my body, because I knew from my spiritual training and knowledge that I had from being a Christian, I knew that our company would be blessed almost miraculously if we could teach people how to tithe. Because tithing is a spiritual law that's as true for everybody, whether they believe in God or not. It's just a true spiritual law that if you are generous and you help people and you support the causes that are so dear to you, and you're generous with your commission check and you're generous with your money, you will be blessed. Now, if you give it away just to get blessed, no, you won't be blessed. But if your heart is right and you give it because you care and because you want to help and because you love those people, you'll be blessed. And when she brought that idea to me, the first thing that popped into my head, I know what the model should be. So I got on the phone with all of our team leaders and told them that I'd hired the attorneys to set up KW Cares. And that KW Cares would be a 501c3 that would help all of our agents. And then later we added the agents' immediate family members, like a brother or a sister or parents. And if somebody had a national disaster or they had a tragedy and they needed help, they could apply for a grant from KW Cares. So I got all the team leaders on the phone and I said, here's how we can make this work. I want you to do a fundraiser and do fundraisers until your market center can make at least $30,000. And then would you be willing to give $3,000, which is 10% of $30,000, to KW Cares? We'll put it in the pot, try to build the pot, and then see we can begin to give big grants to people who need it. Well, you all started having your fundraisers, and instead of making 30,000, whatever you did might make 50,000 and you'd give us 5,000. Or I remember Wendy Harrelson's office had a fundraiser, they made 100,000, so they gave us 10,000. It was just beautiful how people responded. Oh, we had a few market centers that lagged, but the Velvet Hammer kind of called them and talked to them. And then everybody was doing 3,000. And then suddenly it just turned into 5,000. So everybody, every market center in our company gives 5,000, at least the ones in the US, and a lot of them in Canada do. Now the Canadians don't get a tax break because they're not the US. Their laws are different. And so that's how it started. And when Katrina hit, which was a number of years ago, we only had $200,000 in the bank in KW Cares. And of course, for years and years and years, Gary and I paid the expenses on KW Cares so that every single penny could go to agents. We don't do that anymore because it's gotten so big that it needs to pay its own expenses, but we keep the expenses down really well. So it's just been amazing. And you know, I'll never forget the husband and wife team in Denver, Colorado, who left in their car to go celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. And on the way to the restaurant, a random gang drove by their car. They didn't know any of them. None of them knew them. It was just a random gang, an awful bad gang, shot the couple in the car. She became a paraplegic. He had to stay home from real estate to take care of her. I don't know what those people would have done if it hadn't been for KW Cares to help them. We gave them several big grants. I just don't know what would have happened to them. I am so proud of you all. And if we just can get every single person in this company to just give, you know, a few bucks from each commission, oh my goodness. But see, now I've got several $1,000,000 saved so that when the big, huge tragedies happen and we've got to give a whole lot of grants, we've got the money to do it. I'm just so proud of Keller Williams. Now, not all of our agents participate, and that makes me really sad because it means that they haven't been taught and trained about Keller Williams KW Cares. That's what it means. It means leadership isn't doing their job, is what it means, because anybody who understands KW Cares gets tears in their eyes and they want to be a part of it. Maybe they can only give $5 out of every commission. It doesn't matter how much it is. The point is they want to give, but they don't want to give if they don't understand it. And then occasionally I hear an agent say, oh, Mo, all KW Cares is, it's just this insurance company that helps people in the hurricanes and the fires. And I am horrified because that tells me they don't know anything about the dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds of grants we give out to individual agents who've had these tragedies happen. There again, they haven't been told, they haven't been trained. And then if they've been told and trained and they don't want to give, let me tell you what, folks, they're not a match. So get rid of them.
Love it. Love it.
Let
hey,
them
Mo,
go be selfish at some other company.
Oh, I love the caring candor is so awesome. And you know, one of the things that you say, I'm just gonna let you say it, but it has to do with the number 7. And tell us how we've adapted that. So it has to do with some physical.
Okay, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Well, I read a study done by some famous group at Johns Hopkins. And the study said that if you didn't get hugs every day, that you would not heal from illness as fast as you would if you got the hugs. And they had proven in this study that if you were discouraged or you were down, you wouldn't recover from that if you didn't get hugs. And then when I read that study, I thought, what is wrong with me? We've built a family in Keller Williams, and families hug. Mamas hug their children, and hopefully mamas and daddies hug. And the children hug their parents, and the children, when they finish with a fight, will sometimes hug each other. You know how that goes. And I thought, if we will hug each other, we'll stay up better, and we'll be nicer to each other. And so I just teach everybody, you have to get 7 hugs a day. Now, 7 is the biblical perfect number. I won't go into why, but it's kind of fun to understand that. But 7 is the perfect number. You give 7 hugs a day, which means you get 7 hugs a day. And you can even do more if you want. Well, all the HR people in the company, oh, Mo, we can't do that. We'll be accused of sexual harassment or some crazy, stupid thing. And I said, forget it. We're a family. We're going to hug. Period. End of discussion. So a lot of market centers really implemented that. It was just wonderful to see. And then, of course, COVID came along where, you know, everybody's scared to hug anybody. But we do these virtual hugs that I hate. It's better than nothing, but I just can't wait to get back to our offices where we are hugging again.
Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah.
story of 7.
Oh, it's 7 hugs a day, or you just get weird, right?
Yeah, it's 7 hugs a day, or you get weird. Because you'll get
That's right.
discouraged and you'll get down and you get to thinking about all the turmoil in the world, and you get to thinking about all of our precious people who've owned businesses in Minneapolis and they've been burned down. You know, that stuff just makes me sick at my stomach. I just hate it when the anarchists come in and do that. It's not the peaceful protesters that are doing it. It's the anarchists. It's the people who want to take down our country and make it socialistic. Oh,
Yeah.
I'd like to be there and spank their bottoms is what I'd like to do. They need some discipline. It's just awful when I see those businesses burning. Oh, it just breaks my heart. I remember one Black couple in your Minneapolis. They interviewed them on the TV, and they had just opened their new business. They had saved for years. It's gone. Don't get me started on the anarchists.
One of the things that
the ones who
I know
destroy.
Yeah, it's so good to see your passion and it's about lots of different things. You can see you really care. And I guess, we don't have a ton of time left, Mo, but what has you excited about our company now, and where do you see we're heading, and you continue to be passionate about it? What are some things just about there that excite you?
Well, I'm excited that people are beginning to understand that you can have the best technology in the whole world. You can have everything you want in technology in the whole world, but if you don't have culture, you don't have anything. Just look at the burned out area in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Do you get my point? It all goes away if you don't have that foundational piece called culture, sustaining and propping up your company. Now, I'm excited because I said to myself, why in the world didn't I think of an equality committee back in my day years ago? I was stupid for not thinking of that. But I didn't think of it. And I'm really excited that we've had the racial tension because we're discovering where we have issues in market centers. And this gives us a chance for us to really work on that in the areas where we do have problems. We don't have a lot of problems, but we do have some areas where we have some issues. And that gives us a chance to take our company to the next level when we know about these issues and these problems. And I just love John Clyde and Kimber and Bo. And they are giving us so much sensible, good, solid advice and encouragement. And I believe we're going to come through this and really, really correct some things that haven't been appropriate. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm so thrilled and excited about how the way our agents have accepted the technology, and the top agents just used COVID to learn it. And I'm telling you, they ran with it, and I am shocked how many people in our company are doing more business than they did before COVID. It's just mind boggling. Like the guy in Michigan who called me and he was so discouraged, and, you know, he thought, man, Mo, I'm never going to get another listing as long as I live in COVID. He was so discouraged. So I gave him the 4 truths of mindset, and that encouraged him. And he said, okay, Mo, I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to set a goal to get 10 listings this week just off of my database. And a week later, he called me and he got 11 instead of 10. And I thought 10 was pretty high. He got it using command and virtual tours. He did not walk in any house he got as a listing. And most of those houses have sold because the interest rates are so low. And this is the greatest time in the history of my lifetime for selling houses. And we've got people getting off the couch, making their calls and doing better than they've ever done before. Now, we still have some couch sitters that you need to have me talk to. but I mean, it's happening, and I'm so excited about that. And we're doing good in the midst of all this heartbreak and all this mess that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm excited about. We've proven to ourselves again that we can rise above the junk.
That's right. That's right. You know, one of the highlights of every event, of course, is our inspirational morning. And you're such a huge part of that. And so the question on that piece is, do you want to clue us into what's coming?
Well, you know, I don't know whether we're going to have a convention or not. You know, I've been thinking a lot about the inspirational breakfast, and I've been thinking, oh, are we going to have to do a virtual one? I don't want to do a virtual one. I want to do a real one. Oh man, will there be hugging? People will be so excited to hug that they won't think I'm weird anymore. But see, we don't know. And I really have a great idea in my head about inspirational breakfast, and I'm trying to figure out how I would do it virtually if I end up having to do it virtually. So, you know, I just don't know.
Oh, that's great. That's, you know, change, right?
Change. Come out with a vaccination or something right away, then I think Gary will be comfortable having a convention, and those who want to come can come. But I think if there's no vaccine, I think he's going to be real uncomfortable. I don't think he'll have it, because it's just, we don't want to be the cause of anybody getting anything.
Yeah. Yep. That makes a ton of sense. And I know you're super busy, and I only have you for a couple more minutes. And I guess I wanted to leave an open question, Mo. And first of all, I want to say thank you for all that you're doing for our company, all that you've done. I know my life has changed because of Keller Williams, and if you weren't part of it, that wouldn't have happened. So thank you for all you've done for the many, not just the largest company in the world, real estate agents wise, but it's benefiting, and lives are changing because of Keller Williams. And so we thank you very much for all that you've done. And my last question is, what is there that you have to say to us that we should be paying attention to, or just hearing from Mo?
I want you to know that you've got to pick up the banner of culture. Our company is made up of a whole bunch of little pieces, and each little piece is called a market center. And you are only responsible for the culture in your own market center. You have no control over the market center down the street or in another state. You have no control. You have control in your own market center. So I don't want you to worry about anybody else's culture but your own. Clean up your own culture if it needs to be tweaked and cleaned up. Because if every single market center will do that, guess what? We'll have the best culture of any company in the whole wide world. It's when we get, well, you know, they're not in culture. It's when we start that nonsense. You don't have any control over them. Each office is independently owned and operated, and you only have control over your own. And if everybody can get that, we can have the greatest culture imaginable. That's what I would say to you.
All right.
I would also say to you that you have a lot more questions. And if you want to do this again, I would love it. Just call Kelly and we'll get you on the books. It might be a few months.
Wonderful.
I'm booked way out, but we'll get you on.
Well, we are so
guys. I'm so proud of you guys. And I noticed we're down to 83 on the call, but we were up to 93, so we've lost 10. Tell them I said I loved him, as if you know who's off. But I just want you to know that at age 83, I have not quit. I'm as active as ever, and I just love you guys. I want you to have fire in your belly to get off the couch and utilize our tech and make more money than you've ever made before, because that means if you can make more money than you need, then you can give it away to people who need it.
Yes.
Awesome.
And that's joyful.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mo.
Here's your hug.
Bye-bye.
Come on, hug me back.
Back to you,
Come
Mo.
on.
Thank
Come
you.
on, Heather, give me a hug. Okay, and know that I love you very much. Here's a kiss goodbye.
Oh, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Mo. Thank you.